Good Shabbos. This week's portion is a double one, Matos and Maseh. And towards the end, we have a section which deals with somebody who murders unintentionally. And the law is that under certain conditions, if someone murders by mistake, they have to go to an Ir HaMiklot. They have to go to a city of refuge. And they have to stay in the city of refuge until the Kohen Gadol, until the high priest dies. And when that high priest dies, they're allowed to go back to their home. This is very strange. Why should it depend on the death of the high priest? So in general, there's a concept that the misas tzadik, the death of a righteous person, is mechaperes, atones for the sins of the community. And therefore, upon the high priest's death, that would be sufficient atonement for the sin of the negligence which would cause a murder by mistake, an unintentional murder. But the Mishnah actually says in Makos, in one of the tractates of the Gemara, that the mothers of the Kohen Gadol, the mothers of the high priest, would supply food to the people who were in the city of refuge in order that they should not pray for the death of their son, the Kohen Gadol. And he was afraid if they pray for his death, God will answer their prayers and he'll die. And then there's another version that they would give food to the people in the city of refuge in order, not that they should not pray, but that they should pray for his survival. And in both situations, in both versions, the Gemara says, what are you saying? That if they would pray for the death of the Kohen Gadol, God's going to bring upon his death because some murderer, even a negligent murderer, is praying that he should die. And the other version is even more severe. You're saying that if they don't pray for his health, that God would kill him just because somebody else sinned? What's going on here? So the Gemara says the answer is that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, should have been mispalel. He should have prayed that there should be no murders. And the fact that he didn't pray that there was no murders and murders occurred, therefore he is also guilty to some degree, and therefore he could bring about his own death. And we have to therefore ask for people to pray on his behalf, the murderers, or to not pray that he should die, and that will somehow save him. And the question I think that is obvious is, let's say the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, did pray that there shouldn't be murderers. Does that stop people from murdering? If I pray that somebody else should be good, does God then force somehow magically that person should not sin and that he should be very righteous? It doesn't seem like that makes much sense. And I think the answer is very simple. When we talk about prayer in general, what happens when we pray for something and we ask God, please save us? So is God just magically going to respond because we prayed? There are people that would understand it that way. But a simpler way, or maybe something, maybe even a way which really understands the nature of people more, is if I am praying to God and I have a relationship with God and I ask him, please do such and such for me, that means that I really care very much about that. If I pray that I shouldn't sin, it must be that internally I want to make sure that I don't sin. Even if I pray for wealth, it means that I really care about acquiring wealth, and therefore I'll go out and work very hard to make sure I acquire wealth. So the answer to the prayer, to my petition, is not just some magical response by the powers that be, by God, but rather it's part of the process of my own development, my own progress. And when we talk about the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, he's praying for about other people. I think it's also very simple, that the high priest is a leader. He's a leader of the generation. He's an authority figure. And if he could set the tone for how people act. If the high priest really cares about murder and he cares about the health and the welfare of the people that he's leading, that message will be passed down through the community. Is it a guarantee that therefore, if you have the kind, gentle leader, that no one will murder? I don't think so. But it creates it creates a different environment and a different culture in the community, in the city, in the country, and that this person is leading. And therefore, the possibility of murder will be diminished. And in a sense, you can call this sort of trickle-down murder theory, that if the guy on the top or the woman on the top has a good attitude, that attitude will go down the line to those people in the country. We know that's true in in government offices. We know it's true in corporations, that a CEO sets the tone. It's who he hires, how he acts, what his response is to problems, and that just translates down the line. We see it. You can see it going on in politics today. The tone at the top really changes the way people view things. And on the other side, in a democracy, for example, we know that we say we get the leaders that we deserve. If you vote for somebody who is a poor leader, then you deserve a poor leader. And it doesn't have to necessarily even be a vote. Even something like the high priesthood, which was really something which was inherited, a position which was inherited from generation to generation, the way the people act is the way a leader is going to also respond. If people want a gentle, kind leader, and the leader wants to be an effective leader, he has to act in the way that people expect him to act. So therefore, we do get the leaders that we want or that we deserve. And therefore, it's not only trickle down, it's also trickle up. And although that's not what the Talmud says in this response, it sounds like it's always coming from the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. I believe it works both ways. And in any society, we all have an effect on other people. The way we act, and it's obvious, the way we act causes other people to be impressed by the way what we do, and therefore their attitudes also change. If you're a leader, you obviously have a much broader audience. If you're sort of one of the average Joe on the street, your effect is less, but it's still there because you affect the people around you. And that general attitude rises to the top and it cycles around. And therefore, there's the idea that everything is affected by everybody else in the community is very clear. And that's probably what is going on in this Talmud. They're saying, you know what? The high priest, when he dies, how is it an atonement? It's an atonement because when a leader dies, people start to think about what is it that we have to do to make our society better? Why do bad things happen in our society? So that's how it acts as an atonement for that which somebody else might have sinned. But it's also a reaction to the sin. It's also a reaction to the fact that he wasn't caring enough. And if you're not caring enough for other people's lives, then perhaps your life is not important either. And I think if we all have this attitude, we're coming to the 9 days, coming close to the time of Tisha B'Av, where the Talmud tells us that the reason that the destruction of the temple occurred was because of sinas chinam, of unnecessary hatred. That's how our society falls apart and self-destructs. If we don't care for one another, eventually the fabric of society is not strong enough to withstand pressure from the outside. And as everybody always says, what we have to do is obviously just the opposite. We have to have avas chinam. We have to have unnecessary love. We have to be able to be kind and gentle to other people in society, and therefore we create unity and cohesion within our society, and we're stronger, and we withstand the pressures from outside. Good Shabbos.